Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a huge question. What is the future of Europe? We're going to explore a pretty provocative analysis that says the continent is at a massive turning point, facing a choice that could seriously reshape the world as we know it.
Okay, let's just jump right in with a pretty wild claim that the United States, the very architect of the current world order, is now the one taking it apart. You have to ask, why would it do that? Well, let's find out.
So, what on earth does this mean for Europe? To really get a handle on its future, we first need to understand how the entire global map is being redrawn, basically as we speak. So think of it this way. The old world, right? It was kind of like one king controlling the whole board. All the resources, all the power flowed to one center. But in the new world, that's changing. Power is shifting. And the argument here is that the US is strategically, deliberately changing the game to stay ahead.
And that's where this idea of macro regions comes into play. I want you to imagine the world breaking up into a few super powerful, self-sufficient teams. Each one is led by a major player, like the US, China, or Russia. Okay, so if the world is breaking up into these giant teams, you gotta ask, where does that leave Europe? Well, the continent finds itself at this insane crossroads with two possible futures. And here's the kicker. Both of them seem almost impossible to achieve.
And if you look back at history, there's this pattern that you just can't ignore. Every single time a European power tried to unify the whole continent from the inside, it failed. This historical backdrop is absolutely key to understanding the mess Europe is in right now. So when did it actually work? Well, according to this analysis, the only time unification was successful was when it was driven by an outside force. From this point of view, the EU and NATO weren't just these nice European projects. They were American-led strategies, a 1-2 punch designed to counter the Soviet Union. This American military and political umbrella created what one source brilliantly calls greenhouse conditions. Think about that. These conditions allowed the whole European project to grow and flourish, sure, but it never had to face the harsh weather outside. It never developed true independent geopolitical strength of its own.
And this is where it gets really, really interesting. With America kind of stepping back, Europe faces this incredibly stark choice. It can either unite for real, become a global superpower in its own right, or risk just falling apart and becoming a playground for the other major powers.
So let's be real. What's stopping Europe from just becoming a superstate? Well, for starters, would the US, its creator and longtime protector, really be okay with a new powerful rival on the global stage?
And then there's Russia. Historically, Russia has always worked to prevent a single dominant power from controlling Europe. Why would that suddenly change now? And finally, what about a rising China? It's so dependent on global trade. Would it just sit back and welcome a new European power that could challenge its economic lifelines? The answer from this viewpoint is a huge, emphatic no, on all three counts.
So if a united super Europe is pretty much off the table, what's left? Fragmentation. But it's not just a simple collapse into chaos. It's what's being called a re-regionalization, and this is a fascinating idea.
The metaphor used here is just perfect. For decades, Washington was like this giant magnet, aligning all the different European countries, the iron filings, in the same direction. But now that the magnet is being pulled away, those filings are starting to scatter and regroup based on their own natural, historical connections.
But here's the thing. This scattering isn't random. It's not just chaos. What we're told to expect is the reemergence of these historical blocks. You've got a Central European core that looks a lot like the old Habsburg influence, a Northern bloc, a Western bloc, all pulling in slightly different directions.
And this leads to a really harsh new reality, summed up by this brutal quote. A fragmented Europe is no longer a guest at the global dinner party. It's the meal itself, with the world's superpowers looking at it like a menu, deciding who gets what.
Okay, let's bring this all down from the 30,000-foot view. What does this new world order actually mean for a smaller nation, say like Bulgaria? Well, it presents a very stark, very pragmatic choice for simple survival.
So the old way of doing things, this idea of kissing hands, basically just looking to a single great power in Brussels or Washington for everything, that's just not going to cut it anymore. It's obsolete. The new game is all about proactively building your own regional alliances for collective strength.
So the analysis actually lays out a pretty specific game plan. Bulgaria could team up with others to create a Balkan axis, say with Greece and Romania, and then coordinate with that emerging Central European bloc. What's the goal? To create enough collective weight to counterbalance the massive geopolitical pull of a powerful neighbor like Turkey.
And all of this leads to a pretty sobering idea, this concept of the program minimum. In this tougher, more competitive world, grand ambitions are a luxury you just can't afford. For a smaller nation, your absolute maximum goal becomes your bare minimum requirement. Just staying on the map. Simple survival. Ultimately, this whole analysis boils down to one profound and honestly pretty challenging question that every nation, big or small, now has to answer for itself. In a world where the old rules are gone and giants are redrawing the map, what's the price of survival? What are you willing to do, and what are you willing to become just to make it through?